and Square seems to have avoided all of the issues that ISIS has and actually focuses on an experience that's massively valuable. And then I was actually moderating a panel in a gaming conference down in LA, and they started discussing something called Candy Crush. Who knows what Candy Crush is here? Who plays Candy Crush?
AKA Candy Crack.
Yeah, so I didn't, right? And I felt a bit embarrassed. And honestly, like the guy on the panel turned around to me and said, "Do not download it," right? Do not download it. And I downloaded it. And I understand now why he said, "Do not download it." It's military intelligence psychology applied to a game that's just another spin on a Bejeweled, right? It's been around for 15 years, but my God, it is. Don't download it. You haven't downloaded it. Don't download it, right? Yeah, but the psychology of that experience is bigger than, that's my comment on Square versus ISIS.
Just to maybe change gears a little bit, I think going a little bit on the two-platform comment and sort of how the world's moving, I feel like next year, on the enterprise side of apps, companies like Salesforce are kind of finally making the commitment, go native, stop with HTML5, and that world seems to be coalescing, and you're seeing a lot of people like Salesforce making those decisions and actually getting apps that people want to use into their hands, and I think we're just starting to see that now.
All right, so that dovetails right into my next question about new platforms. All right, who's heard of Tizen in this room? Who's heard of the Firefox OS? Who's heard of Yola? Oh, okay, good. They sunk anyway. Good. Canonical. Who's heard of Canonical? Ubuntu. Who's heard of Ubuntu? Well, they've mobilized that now, so it's called Canonical. So, wow, this is 1, 2.
I think Canonical is the name of the company.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's also the OS. They've mobilized. Yeah. So now you can have an OS that powers servers now can fit on a phone. So these are all new. And so what do you guys think, how are these fully featured OSs going to change our industry? I mean, this is like, everyone is trying to crack the duopoly that we have today. And are these other platforms going to make a difference in the industry?
You left Microsoft off.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh well, they're not.
They're just only trying.
They're
to
not
crack
quite. I mean, also RIM was left out. BlackBerry. Sorry. But I mean, those are the old school platforms. But these are the new guys. I mean, these are the guys that are 12 months maybe. You heard these names 12 months ago, 12 months class. So what do you guys think of? Are they going to be disruptive? Let's put it that way.
So I'll just make a quick comment. There's about 6 billion people on the planet that have a phone already, right? They've already got a phone with an operating system. There's more phones in Africa than there are toilets. There's more phones in Africa than there are toothbrushes. That's kind of almost not interesting anymore. Now, there's going to be, depending on who you listen to, 50 billion devices connected in the next 5 to 10 years. There is no ecosystem. There's no, predominant distance there. So that's where the actual change of ecosystem becomes disruptive and interesting. And of course, then people are just a pretty stupid machine at that point as well.
Mario, I'd actually take exception with something you said, which is everybody's trying to disrupt the duopoly. Because, when you...
Well, I think everyone means operators, but...
I'm not even sure about that. I mean, so for instance, from a Swisscom perspective, we don't do Angry Birds, right? We let iOS handle all that, and we focus more on SMB on the enterprise side and a couple managed services that require a truck roll, right? But we let iOS, we let Google, those guys handle the app stores by and large. The way I look at it is, when Mario asked me if I wanted to be on this panel, I said, well, I got something to say. I mean, so I've been doing this now for 12 years, and on the investment side, as an investor, I would say, mobile is dead. Long live mobile, which means all the stuff that we've been looking at investing in over the last 12 years, but meaning getting a solid OS, a form factor that people can build to, an ecosystem, which is payments, advertising, app porting. I mean, it's unbelievable. 5 years ago, I had a startup, they paid $70,000 to do a port to Symbian, right? That would not happen anymore. All of that stuff has been erased. The networks, we've got good solid, we don't have the CDMA,
CDMA GSM battles.
GSM battle. We've got 3G, we've got LTE. LTE's got a lot of headroom. It's less than 200 million subscribers right now. So I look at the fact that we actually have a nice, stable ecosystem as, on the one hand, really boring from an investor looking for disruptive things. On the other hand, it creates tremendous opportunity, because now what we can do is take this standard platform and apply it to specific verticals. And that's, for me, is at least the opportunities where you can take, boring businesses like
Salesforce.
Well, yeah, like a Salesforce moving
Salesforce
in.
OS.
I was even thinking, like we were talking about Greg of IA, I don't know if he's here, but he's looking at mobilizing the lottery, right? Get rid of those stupid scratch cards. I mean, it's those boring industries that need the application of mobile.
Interesting.
So you think about the evolution of, or at least the mutation of the wireless networks. That what started a million years ago is, hey, we have a problem, there's fragmentation out there, there's all these technologies that don't talk to one another. Boy, what a great thing this would be if we could come up with a single standard, and that was the original cellular, the analog. That then sort of diverged into, I sort of think of it almost a Darwinian differentiation, such that they were different species at one point. That is now coming full circle with the move back towards LTE. It's not to say they're identical networks, but they share more features than they do not share. The fragmentation is moving elsewhere now. It is moving with the multiple messaging apps. To your point about the folder that I need to have, well, let's see, this community of people use this, and I think that may be ultimately a problem. Fragmentation of the numerous apps, fragmentation of the operating systems, the difficulty of producing software across not just the platforms, but the various flavors that are out there, I think adds complexity that had, in many cases, been simplified away. One more point. So the problem of unique addresses was solved with the telephone number. Now, that's not very glamorous, but in fact, any telephone number, you throw in the area code and country code, is a unique identifier. A lot of smart people a long time ago figured that out, and you're going to face those collisions again to the extent that there is regional and fragmented development in this thing. So I think that's going to be, with the operator community having sort of learned the lesson about, okay, this would go a lot better if we had a common one. We come back to that lesson every 30 years or so. And I think to watch the issue of fragmentation migrate into other areas is going to be an interesting trend.
So there's a common discussion I had with friends, and was Steve Jobs right? Was a closed, walled garden, closed ecosystem something unopen? Was he right, or is openness still an opportunity for innovation and growth?
Wasn't he the one who said, I don't know why we would have an app store?
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah. I know, but then again, at least because Apple creates, it's a closed ecosystem, right? Not everything's open, not everything's available. Google's a little more open, but then again, at the end of the day, they are still controlled. And is openness is the future about openness? Is that how we're going to innovate?
I think we're talking about classic disruptive theory, right? Which is, you see the vertical integration of a service, a managed service, right? And at some point, getting back to your question about the OSs, you got this duopoly. The cool thing about HTML5 and some of the other guys out there is they're offering the next generation alternative to make sure that those guys keep their nose clean and don't get too piggy. And if they do, then there'll be an opportunity, and you'll see a new horizontal layer replace those new the vertical experiences that exist right now.
Sure, because I had the same opinion when Android came out, and Symbian was a lot like Symbian. A lot of bugs, you know, and I don't even think it had a mute button. I mean, there was a lot of issues around with Android, but it's evolved and come out today. But I'm curious to see that these new OSs, how they may disrupt the ecosystem and keep the noses clean of the duopoly. And that's kind of where I was kind of heading. Because also, 3 of these 4 are Linux-based. Yeah.
So just a quick comment. I feel this open versus closed discussion is a very valley discussion, so to say. Ask any normal user, a mom, 35, 40 years old. She doesn't give crap about open and closed. And I think, you know, we sometimes get too encumbered into this. And I think, you know, going back to Steve Jobs' comment, of course he's always right? Which is not true at all. The only thing constant, you know, is change. So who knows what will happen? But if you really think of what iOS or iPhone in particular disrupted was something very transformative, right? The end user experience, the operating system was for the first time really, really usable on a phone, which was really not done before. And it really comes down to, I feel, someone really pioneering the next interaction medium other than touch. As long as there is touch, I fail to see how, other than Android and iOS is going, you know, anyone else has a chance, unless they have more billions than Apple and more billions than Google to market them.
Microsoft.
Yeah, but you know, they also need to get the software right and distribution right. I think it's very challenging in the existing paradigm. And end users are really, really difficult to convert if you don't have something transformative.
And I think Ash's comment made me think of 2 other things, actually. I agree. I don't think it's about open versus closed. I think it's about good enough and free is the big change.
So I think it's about distribution. And so the one, maybe we're lumping it into Android, but what Amazon is doing with Kindle, I think is going to have a very big impact on sort of where the market is heading. Amazon is dominant, you know, is a very dominant player in a lot of the monetization models and their very big presence in consumer, and they are hell-bent on being an important player in this space. So I think it's a lot more about their distribution reach, less about the sort of OS choice they're making.
Yeah, partly I think I agree, because like the Oklahoma Walmart shopper, right, is kind of always my case study. And I look at, okay, do they definitely, you know, if they get a device, they want to have Facebook on it. And if Facebook's not there, then what's this crap device all about, right? And I think that's where all these new platforms are having a challenge. Right?
So I'm Canadian, maybe I've let that out already, but one of my good friends was the founder of Kobo Books, and I bet nobody here really interacts with a Kobo reader. Anyone? Kobo reader? So Kobo reader, it's a competitor to the tablet. It's in the tablet space. They'll do $1 billion in revenue this year, selling tablets to every market other than the US. So it's a pretty interesting, I mean, it's a significant player in this space.
Wow. Just a last comment on this open versus closed. By and large, I agree with you, Ash. It doesn't really matter. But if you're innovating on top of those platforms, you've got to have transparency and consistency. And I've had 2 portfolio companies who have gotten a punch below the belt from the big guys. And one was summoned to Cupertino, one was summoned to Mountain View, and they were told about policy changes that would have a big impact on their business. One was given a weekend to clean up their act, and there was nothing. They were abiding by the rules as they had been published. There was a change in the rules, and they had to go clean up their act overnight, or they're going to get kicked out of whatever they were doing. So I think that's where open versus closed and keeping the nose clean is really important, because if those guys are acting like aristocracies, then you've got a real issue, because they're going to change the rules to their benefit, and you're not going to see the level of innovation that you have in the past.
Yeah, do you remember Brew?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I published Rolling Stone. It was a hotel rocker, and what he used to do is go trash hotel rooms. That was the game. Yeah, it didn't get approved. Too violent. So yeah, so those are the things I'm worried about, right? Yeah. So let's go into like directed questions. So for David, you know, what's new in Washington with the FCC? I know there were changes recently. So can you give us an update?
So there's a new FCC commissioner. His name is Tom Wheeler, and he used to be the head of CTIA. We are watching his chairmanship with great interest. He has been aggressive in demonstrating that he is not the tool of the wireless industry, and it's been very helpful to consumer groups. And I'm picking my words carefully, as you can tell. I think he is going to be fun to watch. I can tell you that he is the hardest working man in show business. He is one of the smartest human beings that I can imagine for that position. But he has the mixed blessing for our industry. The mixed blessing is no chairman has had the background in the wireless industry that Tom Wheeler brings to that. No chairman has played inside ball from the carrier standpoint and gone into the commission. So that is going to make things colorful. Because if there are, if we rely on some of the same old stories, he's going to call nonsense on them, and that will be.
I like the word nonsense.
Yeah, well, we are who we are, right? You're taping this, right? I don't need this guy back.
Okay. Okay. Now back to studio with Mario. So, question for Geoff. Geoff, what are you seeing happen today that the Foundry is doing that's inspiring you, and kind of what are the major challenges you're working on?
Yeah, I think, and this is a very public thing that AT&T's spoken about actually, is, and it's common to all industries, is what happens when the infrastructure is less valuable than the data that they actually have. And how can they actually use that data in a managed way to improve what they offer to the people that are their customers. And they publicly stated there's 3 levels to the use of the data, and they're very enthusiastic to do this. One level is just to make network performance better. Now to do that, then there's no need to ask anybody's permission, it's completely enclosed, it's the core product. The next one is to make their product offerings better. So AT&T's offerings to people such as Uverse, things like that, there's an opt-in level there. And then there is the next level, which is one that says, okay, I'm going to provide this information to third parties to make third parties' information, services better. Now what's very interesting is there's a very visceral reaction to this from different people, and it tends to change depending on the age groups and the demographics.
Am I going to get more data in free minutes if I opt in?
So potentially, kind of. So what is interesting, and one of the important things to understand, so one of the reasons the Foundry exists is that they don't believe that the money they make today will be there tomorrow. And it's clear that's true because the apps that we've spoken about are giving away their services for free. And understand those applications are competitors to the carriers. They have completely different business models. It's collateral damage. The operators are collateral damage because those companies couldn't exist without what the operators provide. So almost the WhatsApp turn around and say, I'm sorry I've taken 13 billion away from me, it's not my fault.
Do you think they should be regulated? Do you think that the laws that apply to AT&T, T-Mobile should apply to Facebook, WhatsApp, because essentially they are Twilio, they're providing communication services, right? And I think if I read the law, it definitely does look to me that it applies to them.
So we've had some this is kind of like bike riding with people, conversations about regulation and common carriage laws. And there are clearly things that are beneficial to society to have regulated. You don't want services where you can choose who gets the services if those services are, important to society as a leveler.
But by the way, this is not an area which is not being watched by the FCC. There are your cell phone number not getting, calls on your cell phone from telemarketers and stuff. There is a large body of stuff that is being very careful of that stuff, privacy protection, all that sort of things. So I think it's maybe not at the level you're suggesting, but it's there's certainly some boundaries on it that are being watched.